Have you ever been to a networking event for startups where everybody is telling how great their product is? It makes you feel like everybody around is running an ultra successful business, but we know the reality isn't so shiny. So how do you know the truth? Stay tuned to find out the mathematical method of calculating the success of your product. Hi, I'm Ilya, the founder of Eleken, a product design agency for SaaS. And today I will tell you how to use the most important metric for SaaS, average SaaS growth rate. First of all, what is average SaaS growth rate? It's a metric that shows how companies' revenue increases over a certain period. It's numbers that shows how quickly the startup is growing, like the door frame where parents mark kids' height with a pencil. Why should you care about this metric? Because the investors do care about it a lot. Here is what Paul Graham, a co-founder of Y Combinator, says. If there is one number every founder should always grow, it's the company's growth rate. The increasing revenue trend is evidence of the company's sustainability and profitability. Here are 3 reasons why you need to understand revenue growth rate. To score big with investors who want to see your company's potential before investing their money. To develop and adjust operational plans based on weekly, monthly, and longer-term growth rate trends. To make smart decisions about where to put your resources, whether your business is growing like crazy or slowing down. Let's dig deeper into growth rate metric to make things clear. Starting with the main question, how to calculate revenue growth rate. There are different ways of doing it. Personally, I prefer keep things simple. Here's the basic formula to calculate the monthly growth rate. You need to know your first and the second month's revenue. Find the difference between them, divide the first month's revenue and multiply by 100 to see the percentage. For example, if the first month you get $1,000 revenue and $2,500 the second month, your growth rate made up 150%. If you want to calculate the annual growth rate, replace months with years. This way you can know your revenue growth using actual data. If you want to make future revenue estimates, you will need to build a financial forecast, starting with the planning your company's expenses. When your business is in a startup stage, forecasting expenses is usually much easier than revenues. We will come back to the revenue forecast a bit later. Before that, let's get to know SaaS growth benchmarks. SaaS companies' growth rate depends much on a company's development stage. It's like kids. Younger companies grow faster than the older ones. On average, SaaS companies see revenue increase between 15 to 45% year over year. Here is a chart based on a survey run by SaaS Capital. Smaller companies have staggering 144% average growth rate, but as a company grows, its growth rate is decreasing. To see how your business stacks up, you need to compare it to the similar sized companies. For example, an 80% growth rate may sound good, but if you're a $3 million startup, it's actually below average. The average growth rate for startups in the $1 to $3 million range is 93%. Meanwhile, if you're a $20 million business, 80% growth rate is twice as the average. The average growth rate for companies in the $10 to $20 million range is 43%. A few more insights from the survey. In most companies, the growth rate decreases in the first 12 years. By the time a company is 13 years old, the typical growth rate is around 20% a year over year. Companies with the high growth usually have high customer retention. On average, it takes about 5 years for a SaaS company to reach 1 million in annual recurring revenue. So how should you count your growth rate if you're an early stage startup? As you see in the previous survey, they took annual revenue growth. For that, you need data about 2 consequent years. But when your product is younger than that, the natural solution is to count monthly, right? Yes, but I urge you to be careful when using monthly recurrent revenue growth rates for early stage startups. You might think that companies' growth will stay the same, even increase, but that's not always the case. For example, a startup might see a huge growth of 150% or more in its first 2 months, but as the company matures, its growth rate might slow down. That's why some experts suggest looking at the company's growth rate over 12 to 18 months period to get more accurate picture. So now that we learned how to measure average revenue growth rate, we get to the next level, forecasting. How to forecast revenue growth. As said at the beginning of this video, knowing your growth rate is the most important thing to get funding. What is the second most important thing? Knowing how to predict your revenue and expenses. If you're looking for funding, not many investors will be willing to take a chance on your business unless you can convince them with a well thought out planning and revenue forecasting. Accurate projections will also help you create realistic operation and staffing strategies, which are essential business success components. There are 3 tips that might be helpful when you're creating your financial forecast from scratch. First, start with expenses. When you count revenues, it's easy to forget that running a business is costly. So start with counting things you need to pay for, like office rent, utility bills, accounting and legal fees, advertising and marketing, and salaries, and so on. There are some typical expenses, but every business has their own. Add them to your estimations as well. It will be smart to double estimates for advertising and marketing, as they always go beyond expectations. Also keep some ultra budget for just in case. You never know what can happen. happen, so money reserve wouldn't hurt. Second, think both conservatively and aggressively. If you want to grow big, think big. Don't worry, your most aggressive dreams will be balanced with the conservative reality. However, to be ready for both reasonable and ambitious scenarios, spend time creating 2 sets of revenue forecasts. For instance, your conservative plan may look like this one. 1 product or service a year, low price point, 1 marketing channel, no sales staff. And your aggressive dreams will include 1 product or service in the first year, 3 more products for different market segments during the next 3 or 4 years, low price for the basic plan and higher price for the premium, 2 to 3 marketing channels managed by a dedicated marketing manager, several sales working with the leads. By giving room to think ambitiously, you unleash your power to create revolutionary ideas for your business's rapid growth. 3. Mind your margin. And finally, we came to the margin, the result of all your company's efforts. When you set a desirable margin level, you may find your aggressive assumptions become unrealistic. And this is okay. The final goal for each business is to make a profit. Even if you can't realize your ambitious dreams quickly, but your margin is thick, you're on the right path. You should always target an increasing margin trend. Don't just break even and hope for the best later on. The reality can be much harder on you, so do the math in advance. Hope that this video has motivated you to sit down and use the formula to count your average revenue growth rate. And if the result doesn't match your expectations, watch this video on tips how to increase your monthly recurring revenue. And don't forget to subscribe. I put videos on SaaS business and product design 2 times a week, so please subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss out on them. See you soon!